Hello everyone, it's Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive. We're back here with another edition of Budget Magic. This week we're going to standard for a deck I'm calling Blue-Black Walls. As you can see, this deck is super cheap online, 24 bucks, about $80 in paper, and this is kind of a different twist on a Blue-Black control deck. As you'll see by our 11 creatures, they are all walls or creatures with Defender. So we have one Monastery Flock. It is a 0/5 Flying Defender for 2 and a blue, and it has Morph, so you can cast it face down as a 2/2 for 3 mana, and then you can pay 1 blue and flip it up anytime you want to. We also have 4 copies of Wall of Frost. Wall of Frost I've been super impressed with. It's a 0/7 for 1 and 2 blue. It has Defender, and whenever it blocks a creature, the creature doesn't untap during its controller's next untap step. Wall of Frost almost beats red decks on its own. Like, it is almost impossible for them to kill it. If they do kill it, they're usually throwing multiple burn spells at it, which is fine. And it basically, once it gets going, on the first turn it can only shut down 1 creature, but starting with the second turn, it actually can shut down 2 creatures because the creature doesn't untap. So this is a super powerful defensive creature, and it blocks everything in the format that doesn't have flying. So I've been super happy with Wall of Frost. Then we also have 4 copies of Mnemonic Wall. Mnemonic Wall, 0/4 with Defender, costs a whopping 5 mana, which seems like a lot, but when it enters the battlefield, you can return an instant or sorcery card from your graveyard to your hand. So Mnemonic Wall, we'll talk a little bit about some of the synergies. It is a wall, which is good, and it has relatively high toughness, but it's also sort of a weird, like, synergistic combo piece almost in this deck. So we'll talk more about it when we talk about our spells. Finally, the real reason to play this deck, Phenax, God of Deception. So it's a legendary enchantment creature god, 4/7 for 3 blue-black. It's indestructible, of course, like all the gods. As long as our devotion is less than 7 to blue and black, it isn't a creature, so it's just an enchantment. And it has an ability where it gives all of our creatures tap, and target player puts the top X cards of his or her library into his or her graveyard, where X is the creature's toughness. So all of our creatures gain tap. You can mill someone equal to the creature's toughness. So as you can see, Wall of Frost, tap it to mill 7. Mnemonic Wall, tap it to mill 4. Monastery Flock, tap it to mill 5. That's a lot of milling. Like, that adds up pretty fast. And you can do this at instant speed, so you can block with the creature, and then at the end of our opponent's turn or whatever, do the milling. So these are all our creatures. This is our only way to win the game. I guess it's theoretically possible that we could get enough Mnemonic Walls and Walls of Frost on the battlefield that we could turn Phenax into a creature and beat down and win, but that seems so exceedingly unlikely. The only real path to victory in this deck is to have a Phenax out and to mill our opponent out using our walls. So that's why I'm calling it Blue-Black Walls. So the spells are basically a typical Blue-Black control deck, but our wall package here and our Phenax package actually adds some synergies to certain cards. So we'll talk about those. We have 2 Clash of Wills, 1 and an X, counter target spell unless its controller plays X. We have 3 Dissipates, counter target spell, you exile it instead of putting it in the graveyard. 3 Dissolves, counter target spell, scry 1. There's a weird debate between Dissipate and Dissolve. I don't know which one is actually better. Like, on its face, scrying 1 is more powerful than exiling a card, but there are cards in Standard, like Den Protector, Haven of the Spirit Dragon, that the graveyard really does matter, and exiling an Ugin or a Dragon is a real benefit. So it might be correct to play 4 Dissolves and 2 Dissipates, but I don't know. I'm not smart enough to figure out the answer to this question, so I just played 3 and 3. So that's our counter spell suite. So we can use these to just basically sit back and control everything our opponent does. Then we have some removal. We have 4 copies of Ultimate Price, destroy target monocolored creature for 1 and a black. We have 1 copy of Murderous Cut, destroy any creature for 4 and a black. But it also has Delve, so a lot of times we end up casting this for only 1 mana. Then we have 4 copies of Languish. One of the sweet things about Languish, and this doesn't work with Mnemonic Wall, but Monastery Flock and Wall of Frost both survive Languish, so we can play our walls on turn 3, and then on turn 4 we can cast Languish, kill all of our opponent's stuff, and still have this huge blocking wall to take care of our opponent's next threat. So that's one of the sweet synergies in this deck. We also have 2 Jace's Ingenuity. It's just straight up card draw. Instant speed, so we can leave up our counter spells and play it at the end of the turn, but 3 and 2 blue, draw 3 cards. Some of the cooler ones is this one of Foul Renewal. So Foul Renewal, if you haven't played a lot of Limited, you probably haven't seen this card. But it's an instant, you get to return target creature from your graveyard to your hand, and target creature gets -X until end of turn, where X is the toughness of the card returned that way. So the plan of Foul Renewal is twofold, really. There's 2 reasons it's in the deck. First off, I was a little worried that we could run into another control deck, and they could take and kill all of our walls, and we would literally have no way to win the game. Like 9 removal spells, which isn't impossible, especially when you consider Wrath and such, could put us in a position where we literally could not win, and we would just play through our entire deck till we milled ourselves. Foul Renewal gives us the ability to return a creature and takes care of that problem. The second reason it's sweet is it forms this cool synergistic loop with Mnemonic Wall. So we can use Mnemonic Wall to get back Foul Renewal, then we can block with Mnemonic Wall, and then we can cast Foul Renewal, killing something and getting back the Mnemonic Wall, so we can kill something and chump block every turn. Obviously, this is a late game play because it costs a lot of mana, 9 mana actually, to go through the loop, but you can split it up over 2 turns. So that's one of the sweet things. And then, of course, we have 4 copies of Dig Through Time. And one of the sweet things I really like about this deck is we have a Dig Through Time, and Dig, of course, costs 8 mana, but it has Delve, so you can cast it for only 2 blue mana if you have enough cards in your graveyard. Well, something that happens a lot with this deck is we will use our first mill activation with Phenax, like with our Wall of Frost, for instance, to target ourselves. So we can take and have 1 activation of Wall of Frost targeting ourselves, and that immediately gives us enough fuel in our graveyard to dig through time for 2 mana. And then we can also use the Mnemonic Wall to get back the dig through time. So we definitely have games where we end up digging through time 4, 5, 6, 7 times and just pulling out the card we need for every situation until we eventually win the game. So that's the basic idea. We're not going to win by damage. The only way we win is by milling our opponent out, and the way we get there is by just playing all these super slow controlling cards and these big walls that are hard to get through, and eventually we dig through time, find a Phenax, and win the game. The mana base, we have 4 Dismal Backwaters, we have 4 Radiant Fountains. These are important because they gain us life and they're another way of stalling out the game. There's definitely times when we are digging through time for a Radiant Fountain, like that 2 life can really matter. 4 copies of Temple of Deceit, 5 islands, 4 swamps, and 4 Evolving Wilds. So if you were going to make this a non-budget deck, the one thing I would change with the mana base would be to play Polluted Delta over Evolving Wilds. There's really no reason to play Evolving Wilds over Polluted Delta. This said, the mana base is actually pretty solid and pretty close to what you would ideally be playing, minus the Evolving Wilds. So that's the main deck. As far as the sideboard, we have 4 copies of Duress. Great for the control mirrors. Also pretty solid against mono red because they can come in and hit a 4 damage burn spell for only 1 mana. And we do stabilize against mono red eventually, but hitting something on turn in the early turns is pretty important, gives us time to stabilize. Also, Duress is super key against the Ensoul Artifact deck, especially if you are on the draw. Basically, it's impossible for our opponent on the Ensoul Artifact deck to play a Scissors, an Ensoul Artifact, on turn 1. So our opponent plays a land, Springleaf Drum and Ornithopter. They pass the turn, and you know that they're thinking next turn they're going to slap a Scissors on the Ornithopter and start getting in there. And unfortunately, Ensoul Artifact makes the creature a 5/5, so it puts it out of range of Languish, which is kind of difficult for us. And because it's always colorless, it gets around ultimate price. So duress comes in, and it can hit that scissors before it has a chance to hit the battlefield, because we have a almost impossible time beating a turn 2 scissors if we're on the draw. 2 copies to negate, just more counter magic. Phenax Cure, 4 copies. This one is another one that comes in against any aggro deck. 2 damage to a creature, and we gain 2 life. 2 Drown in Sorrows. The combination of 2 Drown in Sorrows plus the 4 main deck Languish is really good against some decks. Like Green-Black Elves, for instance. Any go-wide, like, small creature deck, Jeskai tokens, that stuff, have a really difficult time beating 6 sweepers. 2 Talent of the Telepath. I don't know about this one. We are mill deck, even though we don't play any mill cards other than Phenax. So I don't know. I brought it in one match, never even drew it. Maybe it could be something better there. I'm not exactly sure. And then another murderous cut just for matchups when you really need to kill anything. And like I said, same as with Dig Through Time, we can activate using Phenax our walls to mill ourselves to fuel our murderous cuts. So anyway, I had reasonable success with this deck for some reason. Um, So if you like playing control decks, if you like milling things out, if you like Phenax and playing a bunch of grindy walls, like Mnemonic Wall is awesome. I love this card. If you want to cast 5 or 6 or 7 dig through times in a turn, and mill yourself and mill your opponent and counter a bunch of things and languish away your opponent's board while you leave your Wall of Frost alive, give it a shot. I don't think you'll be disappointed. I had a great time playing it. And the basis of this deck is pretty much set up for blue-black control. So if you decide you want to go towards, I don't know, a different version of blue-black control, you can make a few changes, get rid of some of the walls, and play a regular blue-black control deck. So owning these cards isn't bad. Most of them are still going to be in the format after rotation, so you're going to be able to put them to use for a while. So definitely recommend the deck, and I hope you enjoy the videos.